let me start off by saying I don't know what I'm talking about. I don't know a single thing about boxing. I've never watched it before, nor have I taken much interest in it before. So this will be coming from a perspective of someone who's never been it before. That being said, these are my opinions and observations of the boxing card the other night. These may not be your ones, but they are mine. And let's continue on. Starting off with the undercard, we had the tag team event. It is interesting. It is certainly interesting. Not something I thought I would see in a boxing event, but exciting nonetheless. I liked it. It was exciting. It was a more exciting fight than the majority of the fights on the card. It would have also required a bit more strategy to figure out, because you're not just boxing with yourself, you're boxing with another teammate, which I found quite cool. Watching the fight, it was quite clear there was not much between the two teams. It could have gone either way, and I am more than happy with the result that was eventually given. It was very hard to tell from beginning to end, and I hope I see the two teams fight again, because that would be a very interesting rematch. Nunes versus Nate. Good fight. Nate did look better than Nunes, in my eyes at least, for the majority of that fight. And it was kind of boring, to be honest, but Nate did enough to win, and at the end of the fight, both fighters seemed very, very close and in quite good spirits, which you always love to see. Kenny versus Taylor. I'm not surprised by the result of the fight, although I am a fan of Kenny. I'm not surprised that he lost to Taylor. Taylor had the upper hand on Kenny for pretty much the entire fight, if not the whole thing. I did also notice that Kenny lost a bit of speed towards the end of that, so maybe he was lacking in a bit of stamina. Kenny is still a very, very good boxer with quite a strong punch. So if he improves his stamina a little bit, it'll be good for him, and he will win more and more fights. Dean versus Waleed. This for me was the fight of the night. Back and forth throughout the whole thing. Dean came out of the gates nice and strong. And honestly, if he had about 30 more seconds in that second round, it would have won him there. But at the end, Dean did come out on top, but that didn't stop Waleed from giving it his all. He did claw it back towards the end and had an incredibly strong final round to finish it off. However, it was not to be for Waleed on the night, and Dean won unanimous majority. I can't quite remember off the top of my head. Dean does look to be a very good boxer. I liked how quick he was. He was very light on his feet, which would help with his smaller frame. I look forward to watching him further down the line. Salt versus Slim was another good fight. Salt came out of the box incredibly strong, and Slim looked a bit out of it at the start. However, this didn't stop him. Once he found his rhythm, he clawed back throughout the fight and eventually got the win over Salt. This could be a result of the Salt being not as strong, could be because he came down weight, but both of them had to adjust weights for the fight, so that's neither here nor there. Both of them are still very good fighters, and I look forward to seeing more of them in the future. Now on to the main card. Logan Paul versus Dylan Danis. I'm going to be honest, this wasn't a fight. I'm disappointed with this one. It was by far the worst fight of the night. With the sheer amount of shit Dylan Dennis talked in the lead up to this fight was unbearable and disturbing at times. And to do all of that shit talk and put on that performance, it was a letdown to say the least. To me, it was disrespectful to not just his opponent, but the sport as a whole. He showed up to a fight, and the second he saw drama, he turned and ran like a little bitch for 6 rounds. It just wasn't a good look for both regular boxing and influencer boxing as a whole. And while I do know that Logan desperately wanted to knock him out, and that was a result I wanted to see too, because I don't like Dylan Dennis. I don't like him at all. I think he's a horrible human being. However, he had the next best outcome possible. He completely and utterly embarrassed him the other night for the entire world to see. And it was great. It was very, very good to see him get embarrassed. On to the other main event, probably the one with the bigger talking point, if I'm being honest. It was a close fight, to say the least. Not as explosive as I had expected, but it was still close nonetheless. I might be a bit biased with this fight. I have been watching KSI since late 2012, early 2013, around that era. So I'm quite clearly and understandably in his corner and supporting him through this, as he has been a very big part of my life for the last better half of a decade. As I said, the fight was tense and close throughout, and honestly, it could have been a draw. If I'm being honest, it could have been a draw. However, as I said at the start, I have no idea how boxing works. I have no idea how it's scored. But to me, personally, I think KSI won both the first and second rounds. No questions asked. This is before the point deduction for the back of the head hit. So it could be just me being confused in how boxing works, but to me that seems like KSI won the first 2 rounds. The third and fourth I will give to Tommy Fury. He did very good in those 2 rounds. They were his best rounds in my opinion. And it made it a bit more of a fight, because if it had kept going the first 2 rounds, it would not have been a very good fight. It would have been like KSI Fournier a couple of months back. A shit show. Completely one-sided, which this was not. And I've seen many people online saying this was one-sided and Fury won by a landslide. He didn't. You didn't watch the fight. Anyway, on to the 5th round. It was close. It was very close. But in my mind and heart, obviously, this is probably biased, but I think KSI won the 5th round, if I'm being completely honest. But very narrowly. And I would have given the final round to Fury. Simple as that. When the results came through, I was confused, because at no point did I think Tommy won that fight. I didn't think he'd done enough in the 3rd and 4th round to overcome the point deduction in the 2nd. So I was confused, as I'm sure many people might have been, and I have seen it. I'm not an idiot. I have seen the result, and people weren't happy. But the reaction online was that it was a far more egregious slide than what it actually was. For someone who doesn't know boxing, it was a very close fight for me. In my eyes, it was a draw. Neither side did enough to win, but if I was going to give it to anyone, it would be KSI. That could be biased, but I think the point deduction would have given him the edge, especially with how good he was in the first 2 rounds. But that's neither here nor there. The decision's been made. I think he's appealing. I don't really know. So there's not much really else to say, so I'll hand back over to Spartacus.